What's going on, folks? Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel for a Valentine's Day special, a day that's all about romance, and here I am with the most non-romantic Tine content to keep you folks company. So I've got a few quick fire reviews for MMOs and their content that I jumped into over the last month or so, plus that segment at the end where a viewer asked me to cover a very specific question, and I'll go ahead and do it anyway. It's a little cringe, but whatever. And let's keep this short because I got a news video to work on, so let's begin. First up for the quickfire reviews is Inferno. This is an early access free-to-play MMORPG on Steam that was released late December last year, and I jumped in last month for a quick look. And it was, unfortunately, the least playable and enjoyable game on this list. It's very early days, but there were so many things broken or incomplete, like the quests still had lines of coding dialogue in them, the servers were bonkers with all that rubber banding, and the optimization didn't help things one bit. The look and feel of the game reminded me of Adventon 2, and while the combat was functional, nothing else really stood out about Inferno. Never mind the promise of 100-player PvP on a map or deep PvE, none of that was available in the early access. The one thing that was working on day one itself was the cash shop, where you could buy potions and other stuff. Needless to say, not impressed with the early access for Inferno, and while it may have improved with more updates since, I'm gonna wait for quite a while before jumping back in to check it out. Now for an example of an early access game done right, there's Tam Tam, the monster collecting Pokemon-like MMO that hit Steam last month, and this was pretty fun. For a buy-to-play price, you get quite a fair chunk of content that's actually playable in comparison to the first game we talked about, and Tam Tam's mechanics, the monsters, and the co-op fun will give Pokemon fans a decent alternative to check out. I like the style of the game, I like the mechanics, I like the monsters, it's perfectly playable solo, but there are a couple of things that bother me with Tam Tam. First up, the world building, the reason for me to care, just isn't there. With Pokemon, it had the movies and comics and TV shows all built up over decades to flesh out its characters, monsters, the regions, and the world, which Tam Tam doesn't quite have, and that sort of makes it soulless for me, if you get what I mean. It's just another Pokemon-like game for now with a fun gameplay loop and nothing to latch onto because we just don't know enough about the world and its characters, but hopefully that grows as time goes on. Secondly, I think it's a bit of a stretch for the developers to label this as an MMO. Yes, you can play co-op online, there's others on the world that you can see and interact with, and there's competitive content, but I just can't give this a pass as an MMO. The quintessential stuff I expect just isn't there for a game like this. But it's not a bad game at all. In fact, it's a pretty good one, and it's one of the better ones I played in January. I also returned to Black Desert Online for the launch of the game's 19th class, the Guardian. She is now probably my favorite class to play in BDO because compared to all the others, nothing hits as heavy or as impactful as the Guardian, at least for me. Her skill set is decent pre-awakening with enough solo and small AoEs to be competent, but it's also the look and feel for me that matters, and I get this Dark Souls vibe while engaging in combat, and that's something that the other classes just don't offer enough, or maybe I'm playing the game wrong. I got pretty swept up with the leveling, not thinking of anything else because the fun factor returned in a way, until I realized that I had a lot of content to go through and to grind and to hit Awakening, and I just did not have the time for that. But overall, I was pretty impressed with the Guardian. I had more fun playing that over BDO's last two classes that was released, which were the Archer and the Shy. There's also Guild Wars 2 that released episode 2 of the Ice Boot Saga last month, and I'm going to hold back here because I'm planning something else for a review for the episode, but I will talk about one of the main features of the episode, which is the Drakkar world boss. Now, ArenaNet has been hyping up and building up Drakkar as one of the toughest big bosses to emerge in the game over the last couple of years. And while they was buggy and you couldn't complete it at launch day, the last couple of weeks has ironed stuff out and it's pretty decent. Drakkar so far is long. Yes, it can be challenging, especially if you don't have enough people on a certain map to do it. And it's one of those world bosses where you're probably going to fail a couple of times, especially if you're not doing it on peak hours for your server. It's not exactly farmable because of how long it takes. Plus, if you're not into collecting all the new materials for the Biora March as collectibles like weapons and armor, then you won't have a lot of need for the resources that the world boss drops. But otherwise, aesthetically, really fun. Mechanics are good too, but once you do it 10 times, which you eventually will for some of the achievements, it can feel really repetitive, but that's the nature of world bosses in Guild Wars 2. Now again, I'm holding back because I want to talk more about the strike mission, the story, and the map as a whole in a future video, so stay tuned for that. Now for the final segment, A viewer who shall not be named asked me to name one MMO NPC that I take out on a date for Valentine's Day, and it's random, but yeah, I get it. In the spirit of Valentine's and thinking of all the NPCs I've come across in stories or interacted with in some way, well, two come to mind to answer your question. First up is Jaina Proudmoore. Big fan, I love the hair, and I think we'd have very interesting conversations over dinner. I'd love to ask her questions about that time she hooked up with Arthas, the Lich King himself. And the other is Jaisa Wilsum, the SWTOR Sith Warrior class romance companion, and I made her dark side, so that's pretty self-explanatory. We'd rule the galaxy together without sadistic ways, and that's just how I like it in SWTOR. So I'm extending that question to you folks now. Name an MMO NPC you take out on a date. And that about wraps this quick video up, so if you got plans for tonight or the weekend, hey, have fun, and I'll catch you folks in the next video. Hit the like button for more on MMOs, and do subscribe to the channel for more content. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching.